Hello, everyone. This is yet another wonderful session on the Unity Africa Talk Show. I'm your regular host, Elvis Boateng. On the Unity Africa Talk Show, what we actually do is to talk about, how Africa existed before the pre-colonial, before the advent of the colonial masters, right? So we usually like go on this journey, from one part, whether from West Africa, East Africa, just going on a journey, right, in Africa, right, and talking about how did we govern ourselves before the advent of the colonial masters? What were the structures that we had in place? How was life really like, And it's really, really important. And the essence of these conversations that we're having on the Every Today Africa Talk Show is because we want to trace our history, and we just don't want to trace our history for the sake of tracing our history, but we want to know that, okay, we want to bring ourselves to the point where we are confident in this history, to know that, okay, it is not it's not all that bad in Africa, right? So that we can have confidence, that with this confidence we can place ourselves on the global, on global scale, and bring to the global world what we can also bring, like Africa, we've got something to offer, right? So that's the whole idea behind the Unity Africa Talk Show. And today we are here again to have the conversation. So if you're out there, join this conversation and let's have fun together. And, at the same time, also get ourselves educated. Just like I did mention earlier, my name is Elvis Boateng, and I'll be right back after this short clip. All right. Welcome back. So today, having gone on from one part of Africa to another, right? Today we actually landed in Wolof, right? That's where the journey took us. And so today on the Unity Africa Talk Show, we're going to talk about the Wolof people, and more specifically, we're going to narrow down our conversation to alliances, right? And I think that is really, really important that we talk about alliances, because for the most part, as young people, or regardless of your age, really, people go into businesses, people are part of communities, and they just go solo. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are just doing their thing, in their little corner, which is good. It's a good place to start, but then we need to aspire for the next level, especially in times where the economic conditions are harsh. We need to start considering, okay, if we formed alliances with regards to our businesses and whatever we are into, do we stand a chance of actually putting our businesses, in a place where we are able to survive the harsh economic environment, as it were. So today we are talking about the world of people, like I did mention, and we are going to talk about alliances. All right, so let's um let's go right into it, right? So when we talk about the world of people, who are those world of people? What are they really all about? So that's exactly what we are going to talk about. So if you're out there, let me feel your presence. Say hi in the comment section as we embark on this journey, as it were. So a quick overview, right? As way of introducing the conversation that we are having today, right? So we are at we're hopefully going to look at, okay, geographical location. What is the geographical location of Wolof? I don't even know whether before now you've heard about the Wolof people, right? Yeah. So we'll probably try. We will try to look at the geographical location. And in specific terms, when we talk about the geographical location of the Wolof people, we are primarily looking at Senegal, Gambia, and Mauritania. And the key cities in these places we will be looking at. Okay, Dakar, St. Louis, and Kaolack. right? This wall of people that we're going to look at, it will really be interesting to also look into, okay, what their language is, so in Wolof, they speak the Wolof, right, which is spoken by 10 million people. So in any location where you have 10 million people speaking a particular language, that kind of speaks to the fact that they are a majority, right, and they have a dominant culture, right? So let's look at a bit of the historical context of this wall of people, right? So we will look into origins and rise as a powerful ethnic group in Senegambia region, right? And so this is going to be essentially the scope of the conversation that we are going to have as we talk about the wall of people. The objective of this conversation is to really to focus on the wall of people, their systems of alliances, and their impact on trade, politics, and social structures. All right. I did mention that we are going to look at geographical location of the wall of people, and if you can see my slide, so I have the slide here. I have the map where we have the Mauritania, we have Senegal, we have a lot of people. So if you're looking at the map on my slide, you can see all those places that are like in green, the green areas, are actually like the Wolof, the Wolof area, or where the Wolof people occupied, way back, before modern times, right? So these were places, and you can see that it's really a whole lot of space, right? Like the Wolof people occupied. So let's look at the pre-colonial Wolof states, right? The Wolof Empire actually started in 14th century, specifically between 14th century, to the 16th century. The rise of the Wolof, as a dominant group in the region. The Wolof people, actually became the first to become a very dominant group, in the region, which of course we just looked at, from the map that I showed us, and this region actually had like major kingdoms, right? Typically of most African countries, right? Or empires, which started with, like groups of people coming together to form a clan, then forming kingdoms, then from kingdoms, as they conquer more territories, they become empires. So typical of most African kingdoms, right? The major kingdoms that actually existed then, they have the Jollof, they have the Walu, they have the Kayo, they have the Bawel and the Sine, right? And and this is really key, right? Because we are actually today talking about alliances, and so it will really it is very important that I mentioned this, right? Because when we talk about alliances, these are the different kingdoms and communities that came together, to form great alliances, during the advent of the colonial masters, as it were. So, formation of alliances. Under the formation of alliances, in the conversation, we are going to talk about internal alliances between kingdoms for defense, right? Political power and resource control. That is essentially, right, why we form alliances, whether as an empire, whether as individuals, whether as communities. We form alliances because we as individuals and as communities, right, we don't have everything, right? And so it is important that sometimes we form alliances so that we can actually have political stability. Sometimes we need to be able to form alliances so that we can defend the integrity of our boundaries, right? Sometimes we have to form alliances, so that we can actually have resource control, right? And these things are power. This is critical. If as an individual and as a nation, if you don't want to go extent, right? That you need to be able to kind of form strategic alliances. Knowing fully well that no one person is an island and no one person has all the resources, right? And so it's really critical. Now, the Wolof people actually had decentralized power. They had decentralized power. And by decentralized power, they were independent, but the interesting thing is that they were independent, right? But they were also interconnected, like interconnected. The kingdoms that I talked about, like the Jollof, the Wolof, the Kayo, the Baol, and the Sine people, they were somewhat like interconnected, right? So independent but interconnected, and that kind of helped with collaboration, especially during external threats, right? If you're just joining the conversation, we are talking about the Wall of People, and we are actually specifically looking at the kind of alliances that they formed, and how that these alliances really helped, in their survival, as it were. So that's what we are talking about today. Let me just look into the comment section and see. Okay, yeah. So Elizabeth has joined. Elizabeth Abuaten here from Lagos. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining the conversation. Um, and I really appreciate the effort that you constantly put in. Always being present on the show. Thank you very much. All right. So back to the conversation that we are having. Yeah, we're talking about the Wall of People, right? And I did mention that the Wall of People had a decentralized system, of governance. The society was decentralized. At the same time, it was also like they had different parts, right? Different kingdoms coming together to form a whole, and at the same time, maintaining their individual identities, as it were. And the beautiful thing is that they knew when to come together to collaborate, as it were. I also talked about the fact that the Wall of Kingdom actually started, between the 14th century and the 16th century, as it were. Okay, so slide. Okay, so let's look at the social structure and interkingdom relations, right? So when we talk about the Wall of Kingdom, right? They have this kind of class hierarchy, right? So we're looking at the social structure of the Wall of People. We are able to see that they had this class hierarchy, and when we talk about class hierarchy, essentially, what are we talking about? We're talking about a society that is structured around where certain people are seen as the nobles, right? And certain people are, so just different groups in the society. So some people are seen as nobles, people who belong to nobility, and within the Wall of Kingdom or Wolof community, the Gami people were seen as the nobles, right? They were the freeborns. They were the freeborns. Then whilst the commoners were seen as the Jam, then of course they also have the artisans who were all seen as the Nino, and enslaved people were also known as the Jam. So this is also like this could also be found in other African countries, but we are talking about the Wolof people, right? And so we can say that the typical Wolof community was actually was hierarchical, right? And it was hierarchical because it actually had a class system where class system, the nobles, the freeborns, of course, you also had the commoners, the artisans, and the people who were enslaved, and if you were enslaved and you were born whilst your parents were slaves and you were born, then you're born into the same system, right? And it was usually like hard to come out from that kind of class system, right? So how these groups impacted internal alliances within the world of society are some of the things that we are also going to look at, right? In this conversation that we're having, right? So key alliances between kingdoms. One of the ways that the Wolof people actually formed alliances, right, was through marriage. So the Wolof people, formed alliances, marriage alliances, between the ruling families to ensure political influence, right? So if you found yourself in the Wolof community in those days, you need to be kind of strategic, right? And one of the ways that they were strategic in the alliances was through marriage, right? And even in modern times, right? I know that for the most part, people get married because of love, right? And I think that people should get married because of love, right? But then, from a more strategic point of view, I'm of the opinion that before you fall in love and get emotionally involved, during friendship stages, you need to be very strategic, right? And the whole essence of being strategic in building intentional relationships is because you must recognize that no man is has it all. You have your weaknesses, and you have your strength. And when you come into relationships, you have to see how your strength can help the weaknesses of other people, and how that the strengths of other people can also help with your weaknesses, right? And so that I think that should be the guiding principle, for everyone. And I mean, and when you build relationships and those relationships kind of go into marriage, then it's fine, right? But then the foundation of those relationships is friendship, and this friendship is based um, on being strategic in the sense of your strength, bringing your strength to the place where it is able to solve the weakness of the other people, right? And also being vulnerable enough to allow the strength of other people to take care of your weaknesses. So the lot of people were very strategic in their marriages, right? They formed alliances in marriages. They had intermarriages between the Wolof, there were intermarriages between the Wolof, and neighboring ethnic groups such as the Syria and the Mandinka, which actually helped to strengthen ties. And it's really interesting, right? Because the truth is, in such environments where every now and then there was, right, people are going to think twice when they see that families are interwoven, right? As against when I mean, it's going to be very easy for you to go to war, against a group of people that you have no form of ties with. But in a case where you are group A is interwoven with group B through marital ties, then it becomes harder for them to go to war. And so that kind of creates a more stable environment, as it were, because they are like shared interests, right? In more specific terms, like marriage, right? So intermarriages between the Wolof and neighboring ethnic groups, such as the Syria and Mandika, kind of strengthened ties, right? The use of diplomacy to avoid conflict, and ensure peaceful coexistence, right? So part of being strategic, in forming alliances, is the fact that we need to learn conflict resolutions, and I think that one of the best ways to resolve conflict is even to avoid conflict, right? And in avoidance of conflict, it is not to take things down your throat, but then to build capacity such that it's not everything that you don't just react to everything, because you have internal capacity. So and you also have the ability to like show diplomacy. And so the world of people were actually a very diplomatic people, and through diplomacy they were able to ensure that they had there was peaceful coexistence, between themselves, and of course their neighboring communities, as it were. And I did talk about marriage, right? Which makes it very important. You can see the wedding ceremony of the world of people. So typically, um, during marriages, right? From the picture on the slide, you see that there's that traditional feel, that traditional touch of the world of people. You can see the bride, to be, or the bride as the wife to be the bride, like on the mat, which is symbolic of humility, and the support of the community people, and I think that this is really critical, right? No matter what you do, you must be intentional about like being in a community where you have the right support system, right? Because we all need support, right? We all need support. And when you have it at the back of your mind that you cannot really do a lot without having the right support, then you go the extra mile in being very diplomatic in your relationships. You go the extra mile in being intentional about building relationships, because you recognize the fact that no man is an island, right? And so when you find yourself in that situation where, or in that, that time where you need support, then the entire community can rally around you. And from this wedding ceremony, right, you can see the support system, of the bride, because of that sense of community that we generally even have as Africans, So I have the slide here where showing modern influences on marriage, right? So there is actually like a big difference between the other picture, right? And and the other picture, and this one, right? So even though like marriage is evolving, because marriage is part of our culture, and culture is dynamic, culture is constantly evolving, even though we have to be conscious to maintain the very core of our culture, because that speaks to our identity. But then we must also understand the fact that as we evolve, our culture evolves with us, and marriage is not an exception. So from this picture, when you compare this picture with this, there's actually that bit of difference, right? But then the core of the culture still remains, right? So I did talk about the fact that it's important for us to the Wolof people formed alliances, and one of the ways that they formed alliances was through marriage, right? But marriage was not the only way that they formed alliances. One of the other ways that they formed alliances was also in trade, right? But let me just pause here and see what is happening in the comment section. Okay, not so much is going on in the comment section. Um, at this point, before we talk about alliances in trade, we will go on a short break, and then when we're back, we will talk about um, what are some of the ways that they actually formed alliances, right? Alliances in trade, as a step further, beyond just alliances in marriage, as it were. So I just read from the comment section that I could not be heard and I could not be seen. Please, if you can hear me now and you can see me, I really appreciate it if you could put it in the comment section. I think I had gone for a long time without observing that I couldn't be heard and I couldn't be seen. Um, so how do I may have to. Oh, okay. Thank you very much for the feedback. That you can see me. You can see me now. All right. Cool. So we've been talking about the wall of people, and more specifically, we're talking about alliances, and we've been able to establish the fact that one of the key factors that actually helped the wall of people to survive, in those harsh conditions where environments where there were constant wars and one kingdom fighting against one kingdom, is that they were able to form alliances. And one of the ways that they were able to form alliances was the fact that they formed alliances through marriage, right? And then we were able to establish the fact that through marriage, it made it harder for people to fight against themselves, because you're going to give it a second thought when you realize that the people that you want to fight against, are you're connected to them through marriage, right? And we also talked about alliances through trade, right? And we talked about the fact that the wall of people had a lot of gold, they had a lot of ivory and salt, and so it became very important for them to form alliance through trade, right? Because they needed to um, build that relationship, be very intentional in building that relationship with the people that they were trading with, right? Because you cannot, no matter the goods and services that you have, if you don't have people to exchange it with, then you're not going to really take that journey towards that economic prosperity. We also did mention the fact that there is a direct connection between economic power and political power. And so if you want to be politically stable, then you need to be economically stable. And one of the ways to build economic power is to be intentional and be strategic about building relationships. So that is the conversation that we've been having so far, with respect to the wall of people. All right, so we will keep making progress. Okay, so I think I also did talk about, yeah, in the alliances, in alliance in trade, I did talk about the wall of people were vital intermediaries in the gold, salt, and slave trade, right? Yeah, I already talked about that. They had a lot of gold, they had a lot of ivory from the slide, so let's talk about political alliances, right, with neighboring states, right? The wall of, and the Sarah kingdoms, as it were. So they actually formed alliances through political marriages, and mutual defense pacts, right? Earlier we did talk about alliances through marriage, but beyond that, taking it a step further, is the fact that there were actually political marriages, right? In Africa, another way of looking at this is where there are cases where, and the truth is that we still have those things, right? You have cases where some people will say, you have to marry from this particular family, right? Because your great grandfather and their great grandfather, they go way back. Sometimes, really, the what is behind that motivation is that to keep the money, right, in the families, right? So two rich families, right, encouraging their children to marry from those families, because it's a way of keeping the money and the resources in the family, right? So it's the same idea. It's the same idea where political marriages were arranged, and they were also like encouraged. So you have cases where, if you are born into a royal home, you have to marry someone from a royal home, right? It kind of helps to solidify political ties, and kind of helps to. It's a way of forming alliances, right? So that was not an exception in the wall of among the wall of people, where political marriages were arranged, were encouraged, for mutual defense agreements, right? So for the kingdom of, so for example, the kingdom of Sine, often allied with the Jollof, or maybe the Kayo to resist external invasions. Alliances are very powerful because there are times where the challenges that you're facing, are more than the resources that you command, right? And throughout history, right, we find different shades of alliances, and when the challenges are more than what you the resources that you command, then you need to form alliance, then you need to collaborate, then you need to get into go fall back on the relationships that you have, right? To solidify. If not, the circumstance is going to like crush you and you're going to go extinct, right? And so these are some of the things that we see throughout history, and more specifically as we talk about the wall of people, right? So another form of alliance was Wolof and the Mandinka Empire. So there was people, relations and trade between the Wolof and the powerful Mandinka Empire, which of course, was also the Mali Empire, and this trade, this peaceful relationship, made it really possible for them to also thrive economically, because really, when there's a lot of war, then there's political instability, there's economic instability, and it becomes hard for the people, to prosper. But then when you are very intentional and making sure that you have peaceful, coexistence, with your neighbors, then it helps to foster prosperity. And these are some of the things that the Wolof people, were very intentional about, right? So how did the Wolof people, how were they able to resist colonial the colonial masters, right? Because of the kind of alliances that they formed, right? So internal alliances, they were able to have internal alliances, in response to the French colonization, right? So how Wolof states, like the Kayo and the Walo formed alliances, to resist French incursions in the 19th century, and the story just goes on and on and on, right? Every now and then we have invasions, right? Sometimes it's an economic invasion, sometimes it is that it is you having savings, but then economic and political decisions are made, and it seems like, there's an economic invasion against your salary or against your income, right? But when you find yourself in those kind of situations, right, what are some of the alliances that you have, that you can actually use to come out from those kind of situations? In those days, right, it was an invasion of, of one community, against one other community. It was invasion of the colonial masters against the African community, right? But in modern times, we may not really have those kind of invasions, right? But we also have other forms of invasion, right? Our finances get invaded, right? You're trying to save, and all of a sudden, there is increase, there's increase in inflation, and so your savings begin to dwindle, right? Those are moments where you need to you can fall back on the kind of relationships that you have built, right? Where your business is not moving as it should move, right? Like what kind of relationship have you built when everything was going well, right? And how well can you fall back on those things, right? So that people are very intentional in patronizing you, right? And you can also fall back on even getting loans, right? To like support your business because you've been very intentional in building those alliances, right? So key figures, Lat Jor, king of Kayo, and his diplomatic and military alliances, are some with neighboring rulers, are some of the key alliances that were formed, with the Wolof people that actually helped in fighting against colonialism, as it were. The role of Islamic leaders, like Amadou Bamba, were also very critical in forming alliances, right? Which actually helped with the Wolof people. Now, what is the role of Islam in Wolof alliances? We actually have a situation where the spread of Islam, among the Wolof people, which of course took place in the 19th century, fostering alliances through shared religious beliefs. So there is alliance through religion, there's alliance through marriage, there's alliance through political marriages, right? And there's also alliance through religion. And the beautiful thing about alliance through religion is that religion is really, really powerful, right? When you see people of faith, people that you share the same faith with, you tend to have common values and common principles, and that kind of creates that connection, and in those days people were very intentional about even this religious alliances, as it were. So it's good that they were fostering, they had this religious ties, right? But it is something that they were intentional about. It's just something that they actually um were very, very deliberate about, and so the spread of Islam among the Wolof people, actually helped to foster like this kind of alliances, right? So spreading religion to also be able to like strengthen relationships, right? Because the tendency for you to trust someone that you share the same religious beliefs with is higher as against just a stranger, as it were. And that became the basis for trust, right? And of course you cannot form alliances without trust, right? So these are some of the things that they were able to do, right? So far we've talked about alliances, right? We talked about alliances through marriage, and the point that we established in alliances through marriage is the fact that it is harder, the tendency for you to be at peace with your neighbor because your families are interwoven through marriage is higher than when they were not connected through marriage. We also talked about the fact that in those days people were very intentional about marrying from the same political, like people that share the same political ideology, and royal people marrying into royalty, right? So a prince will have to marry a princess, right? And that in modern times we have such structures as well, where the rich will marry the rich, right? And when the rich keeps marrying the rich, it helps to kind of make the money stay in the families. You understand what I mean? All right. So another role, another form of alliances, is we talk about the Tijan, and the Murid, brotherhoods. So key Islamic movements that these were key Islamic movements that united wall of societies beyond political boundaries, right? Where there is brotherhood, right? So the whole thing about alliances, that it kind of creates that connection that commands a level of loyalty, right? And so the question is, in doing business, right? Do you take business beyond just buying and selling to the point where you have strong connections with with your clients and the people you're constantly doing business with, so that they are doing business with you beyond the fact that you have the right goods and services, but because they have loyalty. There's something they call customer loyalty, right? So how are you positioning your brand? How are you positioning your goods and services? How you intentionally building relationships so that there is that loyalty, right? Loyalty is really, really powerful, right? And in forming alliances, part of the things that we should have at the back of our minds is to ultimately build loyalty, right? So key Islamic movements, like the Murid, brotherhood, actually formed a great alliance, right? Where people were connected beyond political boundaries, right? Alliances between Islamic leaders and political leaders, maintaining peace and promoting trade, right? So nobody is an ally. Nobody just stays all by himself. You need to form alliances, right? And so right now you can actually start asking yourself that, who are the people and what are the businesses do I have to form alliances with? There are some people who are doing business and your business is just really, really small, right? And so and you've been in that small state for a long time, right? As this conversation is going on, maybe one way that you can start thinking about your business is, okay, how do I even form alliances, right? This product that I have, if I merged with another business, right, that is producing the product that's complementary to my product, right? Do I stand a higher chance in putting my products out there and even making more profit? So we can actually start thinking about forming business alliances, right? As against just having little businesses, here and there. And when inflation hits, we go under. But then if we form the right alliances, then it becomes really, it kind of increases our chances of surviving, right? The economic conditions, because we've been able to, through the alliances, form like that kind of created that strong base, because our product fits into another product, And even when the customer comes to you, they are able to say, okay, I need this product, and this product is related to that product, so they can just get everything in one place, right? As against buying a bit here, buying a bit there, and in the process you can even lose a customer. So please, if you are doing a little business, yeah, I know that there's always that inner drive to want to grow your business, right? But one of the ways that you can actually grow your business is to form the right alliances, right? Merge your business with another business. Your business can maintain its identity, but then have that structure, where your business, is kind of interconnected to another business, and so you are able to have more clients, right, patronizing you, as against you just doing the business all by yourself. All right, all right. Think I moved my slide a step further. Okay, so the impact of the Wolof alliances on modern synagogue, right? So here I'm talking about like how historical Wolof alliances, influence modern Senegalese politics. Continuity of alliances through synagogue political and religious leaders, right? And the point here remains that, okay, even in modern times, right, we cannot overemphasize the whole idea about alliances, right? Because we need to form alliances. No nation has it all figured out. No nation can trade, within itself, because no nation has all the resources, right? And no business person has all the resources, and so you need to figure out, okay, who are the people that have the things that can complement what I'm currently doing, so that I can increase my chances of surviving regardless of the economic conditions, right? So um in a nutshell, looking at the wall of people and looking at alliances, what we basically talked about is the fact that the wall of people were able to survive, right? Through the different political and social volatility, because they were able to form the right alliances. They formed trade alliances. And because they were able to form trade alliances, they were able to have a very great grip, on the trade routes, and which of course, influence their economic the economic activities and the ability to stay in power. We talked about, and the fact that this political they also had political alliances, and part of the principles that they used in political alliances was to have political marriages. We also talked about the fact that they encouraged marriages, right? Intermarriages, right? And the beautiful thing about intermarriages is that when communities are interwoven through marriages, or marital ties, it kind of creates that peace, right? Because you don't want to fight against your families, right? And bringing the principles home, we are essentially just saying that, hey, um, um, what are the different ways that we can form alliances? What are the different ways that you can look at your business and say, I've been doing this for a while, how do I take it to the next level? Who are the people that I need to like be very strategic about, in connecting with and building relationships with, so that I can put my business in a better place to survive, against inflation and against the economic hardship. All right, so that is the conversation that we have had today. And Thank you for being a part of the conversation, as always. It's always a pleasure to have you, on the Unity Africa Talk Show. We'll be here next week, to engage, right? And to talk about yet um, another nation, African nation, right? And how they have also built the structure of their communities, and how they have been able to survive, as it were. All right. So see you next week.